So Nepenthe is apparently some sort of a mythical medicine for sorrow, somewhat of a drug of forgetfulness. If only we had that in real life, then I could forget all these terrible episodes. Hello and welcome to my Star Trek Picard Season 1 Episode 7 Nepenthe review. So this episode begins with a flashback to Jurati and Commodore Owl's meeting at the Daystrom Institute. So Commodore Owl does a mind meld on Jurati, and she shows her what could happen if synths were to come back. And it's a whole heap of murders and explosions, and there seems to be a lot of Romulan blood, or Vulcan blood maybe. It's green anyway. But there's nothing really to tie it to synths. It seems like it's all people versus people. So anyway, Commodore Owl asks Jurati to help her out, and she agrees, and then she has to eat this Flintstones chewable space tracker. And then she says that Jurati will have to do something very hard. So then the last Sirena is caught in the Borg tractor field. And Rios is all, what did you get me into, Raffi? Just help out Picard, nothing will happen. So there's a little rift beginning to form between Rios and Raffi. So meanwhile, Raffi's trying to hack the Gigabyte mainframe in the hopes that it will disable the Borg tractor beam. But then she looks over and she spots something on one of her swordfish hacker monitors. And it looks like some drawings of like molecules or something, like a lot of circles and rings, but for some reason it looks like it's drawn on scraps of paper. I don't understand it. It must be what the ex-Borgs are drawing, I guess. But really it means nothing to no one. So it's like, this is another like, let's just pluck something out of the air and then later on it'll mean something. So Narissa, the hot Romulan incest twin, aka Rizzo, has captured Hugh, and she's murdering XBs in order to get him to reveal the location of Picard and Soji. So Narissa seems pretty intent on finding out where Picard and Soji are, not sure why. They know that she came from a planet with 2 red moons and lightning. I guess they're trying to finish the job on killing her, but why bother? Like, Soji's whereabouts should be a secondary concern. Just tell everyone she's a synth and they'll hunt her down. So Narissa says that she can't kill Hugh because that'd be a violation of the treaty with the Federation. So they decide they're going to release the last Sirena, and then Narek's going to follow them in a ship. Good plan. But then the crew of the last Sirena are like, what about Elnor? Good question. What about Elnor? Show? What about him? So then Narissa leaves and Elnor just happens to stumble upon Hugh at that moment. They were together previously, and then they weren't, and now he finds him again as soon as Narissa leaves. Was he watching from the shadows or something? Why didn't he help him? So for some reason, Elnor's going to stay back and help Hugh. Don't know why. I thought he was sworn to Picard, but whatever. This show does what it wants. And then the crew of the La Sirena tell him that he's stunning and brave. So it appears that Elnor and Hugh are best buds now, even though they had about 10 seconds together. So the La Sirena warps away and Narek follows them. This is so boring. So Picard and Soji appear in a forest. Like, there's no way back to the Borg Queen's cell. I would have thought there'd be a transporter receiver or something that they'd be able to send themselves back, but they're just stranded on this planet now. How is that supposed to help the Borg Queen? She just gets transported to some random planet. So then this horrific native creature holds them hostage with a bow and arrow. Oh wait, no, it's just a kid. So Picard says that the kid had better shoot him in the head instead of the heart because the heart ain't beating. Like his heart's made out of duratanium or something. Is that part of the Borg process, or do you just have a bad heart? I'm not sure. But I'm sure it'll come in handy at some point. And Stuart sounds like such a doddering old man in this scene. It's horrible. So this kid has like a compass, and she says she got it from some Captain Corandel or something at Infinity Lakes, whatever that is. They just have to keep working in these pointless conversations, because then later on they can refer to them and be like, hey, remember this thing that's a huge plot device? Well, we mentioned it earlier. What more do you want? But this compass is broken. But I get the sneaking suspicion that this compass is going to point at something very important at some point. Like it's going to detect a magnetic field that they need, or someone's, like maybe Picard's duratanium heart will be magnetic and she'll be able to find him with it. So this kid says to Picard, who's this chick's dad, for some reason? And Picard says, well, you know, Data. And Soji loses her mind, and Picard treats her a bit like an untamed horse. He's all like, easy girl, easy, whoa, whoa. It's kind of weird. So Soji's finding out that everything that she's ever believed is actually false and a fabrication made up to trick her. And this is like the beginnings of a pretty good sci-fi plot. Like, what would happen if you found out that you're actually a robot, not a human, and everything that you knew was all just implanted memories? Like, that's pretty interesting. Where can they go with this, especially in the Star Trek universe? But nah, like, let's just fill the show with explosions instead and hot sex. So Picard tells Soji that her sister Daj is actually dead. And she's like, well, what's the point? Who cares? And I'm like, that is a good point. Like, that was supposed to be a big reveal, but you've just found out that you're not even human. So what does it matter? She was never your sister anyway. You don't have any memories of her. So what does it matter? Like, this show, if it wanted to, could have such interesting issues to explore, but they just don't bother with it. It's just a plot device to drive us to the next scene. And it's like, the last person that she trusted tricked her and tried to kill her, so it's no wonder she's not trusting Picard immediately. Like, she has good reasons to do these things. Like, can we have more of this, please? And the actress that plays Soji does a really good, like, afraid, innocent, unsure kind of face. I think she really suits this role well. If they keep going down this, like, what is it to be a human, and what is it like if you find out that you're not actually human but a robot instead? But will they? And then it turns out that this kid's mum is Troi. What are the odds? So it seems this Borg Queen cell transporter thing had the ability for you to pick where you're going. You don't just get dumped to a random planet. So I'm going to give the show a bit of leeway there and say that that's not a plot hole. They picked this planet because they knew Troi was going to be there. And then Troi says to Picard, like, oh, you're in trouble. Like, how bad? And I think to myself, you're an empath. Shouldn't you know that kind of thing? I guess she's not a mind reader. And then Riker's inside cooking, and I'm having some serious flashbacks to Kirk's home in the Nexus in Star Trek Generations. So it seems that Riker tried to stop Picard from saving these Romulans. Like, he says that, I told you that if you help these Romulans, you'll have nothing but Romulans crawling through your life. So is he just trying to warn him of the consequences of his actions, or is all of Starfleet just turned into a bunch of pussies? So Troi comes over and says that Soji has all the mannerisms of a regular person, fear and apprehension, but she says other than that, she can't really read her. And it's like, yeah, she's a robot. Like, we get this. This is the show, again, trying to tell people in the show things that we as the audience already know. And then Will and Deanna say that Picard and Soji can stay as long as they need. And then we get this really sexy shower scene where a grown woman lets a child watch her shower. And then this kid says to Soji, can you run really fast and jump really high and bend steel with your bare hands? And I'm thinking to myself, are these Superman's attributes? Is she trying to compare her to Superman? Do they have Superman in the Star Trek universe? I'm not sure. So then they go into this big scene about how, like, Data was superhuman, had all these skills and abilities, but in the end, all he really wanted was to be human. So it's kind of like saying to Soji, you should be happy that you have these abilities and, like, maybe just stop your complaining. So Troi and Riker had another kid who was a son called Thad, or Thaddeus. And he's dead now. And they keep his bedroom as like a creepy shrine. And Troi tells Picard that if something were to happen to Kestra, who's their living daughter, she just wouldn't be able to bear it. So, a bit of foreshadowing there. So I don't know if Narek's little ship has cloaking, but it seems like he can follow them very closely and not be detected. Unless this is just some sort of visual representation that he's following them and he's not actually like 10 meters behind their ship. Unsure. But there's this weird shot of him just like kicking back and chilling and playing with his like butterfly knife. It looks like a butterfly knife, but it's some sort of weird box thing. It's like he's the Fonz of outer space. So Rios's plan is to drop out of warp speed so that he like overshoots them. I don't know how that's supposed to work. So Jurati doesn't want to go to Nepenthe. She seems to be feeling guilty, maybe about how she's leading Narek to them. And Raffi's all suspicious of her, like, before you wanted to see a synth, and now you've got an opportunity to see a synth, and you don't want to take it. What's going on? And there's a huge, cringy F-bomb drop. I guess they have to keep that F-bomb quota up. So Riker tells Picard that he doesn't want any danger following him there. And I'm thinking to myself, oh yeah, this kid is gonna die. Riker and Troi's kid is gonna be killed. Absolutely. So Soji comes out and she tilts her head like a dog looking at the pizza. Like that. And Riker says something about how he may not be an expert in robots, but he knows a data mannerism when he sees one. So I'm wondering if she's ever done it before, or maybe you have to know that you're a robot to do a robot mannerism. And Riker's kids made up these languages, and Soji learned one of them in like 2 minutes by reading a book. And then Riker says something about classic Picard arrogance. Like, what is it with this show and just shitting on Picard? I guess we've reached the part of the episode where they just have to take a dump on him. If you hate Picard so much, why'd you make the story about him and name the show after him? So Troi says that her son Thad never had a homeworld because he grew up on starships. So he invented a homeworld and he called it Adani, which means home. And he had some disease that if they had have been able to like grow a culture of the cells in like a neurotic matrix or something, that they would have been able to cure him quite easily. But because of the synth ban, they weren't able to do that and he died. So I guess that's how they're involved in this whole synth thing. And then Picard comes over and like uses some sarcasm. Like he says to Soji like, oh yeah, we're totally just trying to make you feel at ease and then we're going to totally torture you. And I'm like, what the hell? Has Picard ever used sarcasm before? Is that a trait of his? And then Troi comes over and tells him off for being a jerk. And I'm like, this is the first time that Picard has actually deserved it. Like, Soji's all alone. She doesn't know who she can trust. So maybe stop being such a jerk around her. But Picard just says that he just wants to feel useful. So that's the theme. Usefulness. So back on the Borg cube, and Hugh and Elnor are heading to the Borg Queen's cell. And Hugh says that he's going to make them pay. Urgh. But then Narissa just comes out of the walls. She just appears. And this is another one of those examples of people just appearing at convenient times out of nowhere. Seems to do it every episode. Narissa says that now that he's in open insurrection, she can basically kill him. And that got me thinking that, well, she could have just killed Elnor anyway because he's not part of a Federation treaty or anything. He just arrived unannounced. Narissa doesn't even seem to acknowledge that Elnor's there. She's just like, Hugh, we meet again. It's like, there's this random stranger here on your Borg cube that you're running. What's going on? So, of course, Narissa does the whole, my honor won't let me kill you with a phaser. So she decides to go hand-to-hand with this trained hand-to-hand warrior. Stupid. So after about 3 seconds of fighting, seriously, it's like 3 seconds, and Elnor kicking her in the face, she just throws a knife straight at Hugh's neck and kills him. Why doesn't she just do that to Elnor in the fight? So Elnor runs over to help Hugh, and then Narissa pulls her phaser out and like goes to shoot, or disruptor or whatever it is, and goes to shoot Elnor, and Elnor pulls the knife out of Hugh's throat and throws it at her. And then just as it's going to hit her, she teleports out of there. How? Like, where does this teleportation come from? Who teleported her? You can't just teleport yourself. She didn't press a button or anything. She just disappeared as the knife was about to hit her. Magic. So then Hugh says to Elnor that in order to get into the Queen's cell, he'll need to use an XB. And I'm like, oh my god, he's going to call back 7 of 9. So then Raffi on the last Sirena is trying to make Jurati feel better. So she gives her some cake and some chocolate milk. And then Jurati vomits for the second time in this episode. What is it with this episode and vomiting? But apparently Narek's still following them because they can detect his warp signature. That's some good stealth. So if Rios can't make it to Nepenthe, then Picard's going to need a new ship. And this kid reveals that this Captain Crunch guy has a ship called the Inside Straight. Is this going to be relevant at all? Your guess is as good as mine. So Picard tells Soji that he wants to help her because she's made from bits of his friend Data, and Data also helped save his life. Plus, he just wants to feel useful. There it is again, usefulness. So Soji tells Riker, Picard, and Troi about the planet with the 2 red moons and the lightning. And Riker says that maybe that's where Maddox went after the ban on synthetics. And then Soji says, maybe I've got a homeworld or a Dani. And I'm like, this is just terrible. Terrible writing. And then it turns out that Riker's 14-year-old daughter is texting some old hermit at night. Nothing sus about that at all. So she's been feeding this captain the info about the planet with the 2 red moons and the lightning. And he says, oh, well, that's in the Vite sector. Part of the hooligan system. But the planet is unnamed and it only has a number. Relevance of that, I guess that's why it wasn't checked. Because it's uncharted. So Rios does that thing where people take someone aside and say to them, oh man, I'm worried about this other person. They're doing this, I think they're doing this thing. But it turns out the person that they're talking to is actually the one doing the thing. So Rios is like, Jurati, I think Raffi's like the reason we're being followed. Like, how sus is it that she tried to leave us at Free Cloud and now she's back unannounced? Like, what's going on there? That's a bit suspicious. And Jurati's all like, it's not Raffi. But then Raffi says, hey, Rios, we got that ship back again, and interrupts her. So they can't reveal to Rios that it's actually Jurati. I don't know why she doesn't just tell him if she's so guilty about it. So then Jurati injects herself in the neck with some type of goo. Uranium hydride? Apparently it can slow down neutrons, so maybe it'll stop the tracking. I guess they're tracking her radioactively. That's why she had to chew that tracker. And then bam. Narek's tracking stops working. But oh no, that stuff puts Agnes in a coma. I'm so distraught. So then in the Borg cube, Elnor is trying to hide and he just happens to see Picard's Fenris Ranger SOS signaler taped under a desk. How? What? What are the odds? When did Picard put it there? What? Who? What? So then the Fenris SOS is activated. And I guess 7 of 9 is going to be the only Fenris Ranger within range of this SOS beacon. So she's going to have to be the one that turns up. And then Rios makes it to comms range to Picard. So it turns out this whole Captain Crunch thing was like totally pointless. Except for maybe identifying the planet with the red moons. And then Picard says that Rios can be a little testy. That's nuts. And we learn that Riker's on active reserve, so maybe he'll be called back if the Federation get called into this thing. Possible. So Riker's kid says to Soji that, like, something bad has happened to you. And when something bad happens to me, my mum and dad make me feel better. So what you need is a mum and dad. And Soji's like, well, I don't have a mum and dad. And this kid's all like, well, you've got Picard, so you can have Picard, and Picard can have you, and you can be like a family. And then as they're leaving, the kid gives Soji the broken compass. And I'm like, I knew it. I could feel it. It's going to be some weird thing with this compass where it points to something. So I'm giving this episode of Star Trek Picard a 5 out of 10. It's gone back down again. There's just so many contrivances. Like, where did that Fenris Ranger beacon come from? Picard had it, and he couldn't have planted it. because he didn't know that Elnor was going to be there until the last minute, so he couldn't have planted it in case Elnor needed it. Unless some random person left the Fenris Ranger SOS beacon under a table in a Borg cube for some reason. And Elnor manages to find Hugh just as the last Sirena gets free of the tractor beam, but I'm wondering why and when were they separated in the first place? And why didn't he help earlier when those XBs were being murdered? And they had a good premise there of what would happen if you found out that you weren't actually human and were a robot, and your entire life was just false memories. That's some interesting stuff, especially within this Star Trek universe. But nah, they just glossed over it. We need some more explosions. We just need to get to the next scene. It was an interesting topic and it had my attention. I was actually invested in it, and then it's just gone. And I felt like Riker and Troi were just a real, remember this? It's a real member-berry situation. And if they're not just drilling it into your head that this kid's going to get kidnapped or murdered, then I don't know what's happening. And they introduced this whole captain with a compass and a ship and where he lives and all this, just for him to only supply the location of a planet with 2 red moons and lightning. And if they're going to drop an F-bomb, can they do it when someone gets hurt or scared, instead of just using it in a sentence for emphasis? I'm really worried that I'm just going to start enjoying crapping on this show. I'm going to hate watch it. That's never fun. And I'm worried if that happens, then when something good does happen in the show, I won't be able to see it because I'll be too busy focusing on the negative. So I think I'm going to do a prediction video or 2 where maybe I'll do one of where I think the plot's going to go, maybe one about where I want the plot to go, and probably one where it's here's the worst case scenario. If they write the most stupid story possible, here's where I think it's going to go. So hit that subscribe button if you think you'd like to see that. Anyway, take it easy. I'm out of here.